What's up everyone? In this video, we will dive deeper into how to optimize breathing by understanding breathing cycles and the muscles that are involved in breathing. So let's get started. First thing we need to do in order to breathe optimally is to actually learn and understand how the muscles or which muscles are involved in respiration. And so there are three types of muscles in the body in general. So you have the smooth muscles, the cardiac muscles, and the skeletal muscles. And if we take, for example, the cardiac muscles, they are specific muscles in the heart, allowing it to contract involuntarily or unconsciously. So what that means is that we don't need to focus on making our heart beat or contract. It keeps pumping blood in our body unconsciously or without any of conscious effort. Now let's take some time to look at what skeletal muscles are. And skeletal muscles are what produces the movements of certain body parts in relation to other body parts in your body. So moving your arms, moving your legs, moving your eyes even. These all require some skeletal muscles. So unlike other types of muscle, like smooth muscles or cardiac muscles, skeletal muscles are under voluntary control, conscious control. And it makes sense, right? When you want to move your arm or leg, you send a signal to your brain and you make the decision to move this body part. What's intriguing here is that the respiratory muscles are skeletal muscles. So breathing can both be controlled unconsciously and consciously. It makes sense that it can be controlled or can be done unconsciously, right? Because otherwise, as soon as we would stop thinking about breathing, then we would just die or run out of air. But the most interesting part is that we can actually control our breath consciously as well. And so here's the interesting question. When was the last time that you took a conscious breath? Is this something that you do daily? Or has it even crossed your mind that you could actually control your respiration? It's probably not a surprise or a spoiler since you've watched the past videos, but it still remains an interesting thing to think about. So how often you consciously control your breath? And this is something that can be quite helpful when playing. Having something to refocus on, something that is always present in the moment, that's your breath. And the trick or the tip can be as simple as taking one deep breath to refocus on your game when you feel you're getting away from your A game, or when you start to feel the pent-up emotional tension. Just take one deep breath in and then exhale, and with the exhale, try to come back to this more comfortable, relaxed, calm state to perform. Something else I'd like to mention, there's actually two groups of respiratory muscles. We have the inspiratory muscles, which include, or the main one being the diaphragm. And so we'll look at the influence of the diaphragm on breathing on the next slide. And we also have the group of expiratory muscles, which include, again, many muscles, and some of which are abdominal muscles. So think about how you contract your belly when you want to forcefully exhale. Actually, try it out. Take a deep breath in, forcefully exhale. You should feel your belly tighten up as you exhale. So when you forcefully exhale, you should feel your abdominal muscle contract, or some of them. And so typically what we can understand is that during low breathing effort, like when you're resting, only the inspiratory muscles are active. So when you're at a resting state, you're going to take your breaths in and then you're going to exhale. The exhale will be done on its own. We'll understand why in the next slide. But during high breathing effort like exercise, that's when your expiratory muscles, your abdominal muscles and other muscles will become active to help you fasten your breathing cycle or help you exhale the CO2 so that you can bring some O2 in to your blood cells and to your body in general. So we're getting maybe in too much depth here, so I want to keep it as simple as that, just understanding how your inspiratory muscle, mainly the diaphragm, is involved in inhaling, and when you're exhaling, typically nothing's involved, so everything comes back to a resting phase. Or you might use some of your abdominal muscles, for example, as a way to forcefully exhale in a high intensity situation. So let's actually look at what a breathing cycle looks like, and in order to do so, I'm going to use here these pictures that were taken from Andrew Huberman on Instagram. And this guy is a neuroscientist which I highly encourage you check his podcast, the Huberman Lab. He explains a lot of things around the neuroscience of motivation, breathing, focus, emotions, etc. So here we have the diaphragm. Basically on the left side, we have the diaphragm's resting position after an exhale. So when you're done exhaling, your diaphragm comes back to this resting position. And you have the heart that seems to be a bit more contracted. And on the right side, what you have is what it looks like when you take an inhale and you engage your diaphragm in the process. So here you see how you consciously engage the diaphragm, and so the diaphragm lowers in your body, allowing for more space for your lungs here and more space for your heart. And so like I mentioned earlier, the major respiratory muscle is the diaphragm. And so during normal inspiration, the diaphragm will contract and flatten, pushing on the abdomen. And that's why we tend to use the analogy of breathing through the belly. So when you inhale, your diaphragm lowers and pushes down on your abdomen. So if you want to know if you're breathing using your diaphragm, you can put one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly and see which one rises when you inhale. Is it the chest? Is it the abdomen? Or is it even both? So take a moment here to try it out and see how it feels. Put one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly, and start inhaling while using your diaphragm. So do you feel your belly or your abdomen rising, or do you feel it primarily in your chest? This will tell you how much you engage your diaphragm. So let's go back here to the resting position, so the left picture. In this resting position, your diaphragm naturally moves up, returning to what's called a kind of a domed resting position. And this causes the lungs to deflate and expel air, as you can see here. And the heart volume is reduced as well here. So heart volume is reduced, blood flows through the heart faster. So the brain sends a signal to slow the heart down. So in that situation, because the heart's volume is reduced and the blood flows through the heart faster, the brain will send a signal to slow down the heart rate. So here's the next interesting relationship, right? When you exhale, your diaphragm comes back to a resting position, and this situation or this relationship causes the heart to reduce its volume, and that forces your brain to send a signal to slow down the heart. So when you exhale, what happens is a signal is sent from the brain to the heart to slow down the heart. So think about how you typically feel after an exhale. Actually, try it out right now. Take a deep inhale and then let the air come out of your lungs naturally. So deep inhale, and then just let the diaphragm come back to its natural position, which will inevitably force the air out of your lungs. So that's what's interesting about this resting state. You inhale, and as soon as you let go of your diaphragm, it will come back to its natural position, which will force the air out. So how do you feel when you're done exhaling? Typically, I'd say that you should probably feel like some sort of calm or relaxed state. So again, if you want to try it again, one deep breath, and then let the air come out naturally. Now let's look at what happens actually when you inhale consciously using your diaphragm. So as I said already, the diaphragm moves down, the heart volume is increased. You can see here how the volume of the heart is increased. The blood flows through the heart slower, right? If the volume is bigger, the blood flow will be slower. So that sends a signal, the brain needs to send a signal to speed up the heart in that situation because there's more volume. So we need more blood so that it flows faster through the heart. So how do you feel in that state when you take an inhale? So when you take a deep breath in and you hold it there, actually try it out. Take one deep breath in and hold the breath inside. You might probably feel a bit more activated because maybe your heart's beating faster. So that's the signal that is sent from your brain to your heart to start beating faster because of the increased room or volume for the heart. So actually, if you consciously use your diaphragm to breathe in and you hold it there, you will start to feel your heart beating faster. And that's quite helpful to understand when you're playing poker. Because in some high pressure situations, let's say you pull a big bluff or you're all in a deep tournament, you might not realize it, but we take a deep breath in those situations and sometimes we hold it there. So whenever you're in a high stressful situation, sometimes what will happen is you're going to pull your bluff or go all in, and then you're going to take a deep breath in and hold it there, waiting for your opponent to make a decision. And during all this time, you're in your fight or flight mode. Your heart's beating faster, your blood is flowing faster, more hair, more volume in your heart. The stakes are high. There's a lot of emotional tension, and you're holding that breath in. So try to pay attention to those situations when they arise and bring yourself back down to a calmer state by slowly exhaling. So whenever you're in this high pressure situation and you probably have this deep inhale inside your body and you're probably holding that breath in, actually slowly try to exhale and create this situation where you're coming back to a restful state where your brain will send a signal to slow your heart down. So whenever you keep your breath in, your brain actually sends a signal to speed the heart up. So you're going to start to feel more activated and agitated. But when you slowly exhale, you're sending a different signal to your brain, from your brain to your heart, the signal to slow your heart down. So feeling more calm and rested in those situations. So in the example that I gave, that I just described, where you're in this high intensity, high stressful situation, you're the one that is creating the heightened state of activation by unconsciously holding your breath, by holding an inhale. So your diaphragm's down, your heart volume's increased, your blood flow slower, your heart start to speed up. And what's your interpretation in those situations when your heart starts to speed up? There's danger. It's a highly stressful situation. So you're creating a situation with high emotional tension and high physical activation just simply by holding down your breath. And when you're in that highly activated situation, that might lead to worst emotional reactions when you end up losing in that situation. So when you end up losing or getting called on your bluff, or when you end up losing an all-in, if you're in a high physically activated situation, risks are that you're going to have worst emotional reactions in those situations. So that's why here I'm putting a lot of emphasis on your ability to think about exhaling and calming yourself, or bringing your heart rate to a lower state. And so here's one takeaway about this breathing cycle. The rate at which you breathe, so the amount of breaths per minute, and the length of your inhales and exhale will influence the speed at which your heart beats. So it shouldn't come at any surprise at this moment, but what needs to be reminded of is the length of your inhales and exhales will influence the speed at which your heart beats. Are you spending more time inhaling? Are you taking enough deep breaths? Those kind of things. So by now you should know that your heart rate will influence how you feel in a specific situation. Low heart rate, calm and relaxed state, so you're in your parasympathetic nervous system, and high heart rate, you're in your fight or flight system, you're in the sympathetic nervous system. And all of this is controlled or managed by your diaphragm and your ability to use it when breathing. So let's make this more concrete and specific. Let's look at some respiratory frequencies or breathing cycles. So the average respiratory frequency in humans is around 16 to 20 breaths per minute. That's for average people. And that's some shallow breathing. That's basically something along the lines of 3 to 4 seconds for an entire cycle of breathing. So think about it for a second and actually try it. Breathe in for 1.5 seconds and breathe out for 1.5 seconds. Those are pretty short breathing cycles, right? You're almost always seeking more air. And you probably can't hold an exhale for a long period of time because you just need more air in. You need your next exhale. And so that's a state of higher activation of the sympathetic state compared to a situation where you would be in deep breathing. So optimally, you'd like to increase the length of your breathing cycles towards something that looks like 6 breaths per minute or 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. So that's 10 seconds per cycle per minute. And if we look at this 10 breaths per minute, that's probably what I would call the neutral point, kind of a balanced state. But even the state can be challenging, like trying to reach 10 breaths per minute when you've been breathing your entire life at 20 breaths per minute. That can be difficult, that might be challenging to move from that end, from one end to the other. But difficult does not mean impossible. So breathing is also a skill that requires practice. So expect it to be difficult at first, but give yourself time, accumulate reps of deeper breathing, basically. So in order to maintain a decreased respiratory rate, so basically if you want to be between the 6 breaths to 10 breaths per minute, because you're taking less breaths per minute, you're going to need to increase the volume of air that you take in. That's why we call that deep breathing. Because if you were to take shallow breaths for 10 seconds, you wouldn't get enough oxygen or enough air in, and so you would break what's called your homeostasis state, so your balanced state of breathing, basically. So if you want to slow down your breathing rate, you need to increase the volume of air that you take in order to remain or stay in this balanced state. So that's why that when you're taking those inhale and exhales for 3 or 5 seconds, you really want to practice manage your ability to take more volume in and out of your lungs. And that can be difficult if you've never done this before and if you spent all your time in this cycle. And so the reason why I'm putting a lot of emphasis on this 6 breaths per minute and 10 breaths per minute is because it's strongly linked to what's called your maximum heart rate variability. And it's typically observed that your maximum heart rate variability will be reached around 6 breaths per minute. 6 breaths per minute, yeah. And not beats per minute, but 6 breaths per minute. So what does it mean to have a high heart rate variability? Basically, it means that your body is more responsive to both your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So you have a better ability to get activated or to get calmed and relaxed when necessary. So this is a sign that your nervous system is balanced and that your body is very capable of adapting to its environment to perform at its best. So think about this for a second. You're creating a state where your body is capable of adaptation, and performing at its best. And I think this is something that we're all looking for when we play poker. And that's why focusing and managing or mastering your ability to breathe around 6 breaths per minute or 10 breaths per minute will actually allow you to have a better autonomic nervous system, better sensitivity, but also more control over your performance. And so some of the benefits that I want to mention: better emotional control, improve stress management, increased ability to control emotions. So managing or mastering your breathing actually allows you to reduce the symptoms of arousal in your body whenever you're in a high stressful or tense situation. So you're going to feel less triggered or less on the edge whenever you're experiencing a difficult situation. So who wouldn't want to feel calmer and more relaxed when they lose a big pot? I'm one of those people that would want to feel calmer and more relaxed even in high pressure situation. Other benefits: decrease in anxiety and also decreased in sleep latency. And so decreased time that it takes for you to go from being fully awake to going to bed. And that's another underrated benefits, I think, like your ability to actually come from a heightened state of activation to bring yourself back to a lower state of rest and digest and even a sleeping state. So do I need to actually say more about the importance and value of breathing? I think I've said enough to that we can go into something more applicable, something that's more concrete. So I've explained here why breathing is so important to your performance, but also your well-being. And so in the next video, the goal will be to take a closer look at breathing techniques to help you manage your activation level, but also help you just manage your emotions and be in a better feeling state when playing. So that's it for today. Take care, everyone.